The tool brand your dad or grandfather swore by for 30 years just released a product that feels like it was assembled by someone who has never used a tool in their life. The housing is thin plastic where it used to be magnesium. The cord is shorter. The warranty card lists a call center in a country that has nothing to do with the history of that brand. And if you go online to look it up, you'll find the original product was discontinued 2 years ago without any announcement. You're holding a ghost, a name with nothing left behind it. Hit subscribe before we get into it, because this video is going to save you from wasting money on a brand name that no longer means what you think it does. I'm Jerry Davis. I've been in construction and renovation for over 2 decades. I've bought tools, broken tools, thrown tools across a job site, and replaced tools more times than I want to admit. And over the last 10 to 15 years, I've watched something happen to the tool industry that most people don't talk about clearly enough. It's not dramatic. It doesn't happen all at once, but it is absolutely something every homeowner, tradesman, and weekend hobbyist needs to understand before they walk into a hardware store or click add to cart. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly which brands have been gutted, how to spot a hollow brand before you buy, and what to actually look for when you need a tool that's going to hold up on a real job. Let's start with Porter Cable. If you don't know that name, your grandfather probably did. This brand goes back to the early 1900s. They made some of the most respected woodworking and construction power tools ever built. Sanders, routers, circular saws, finishing nailers, real tools built in Jackson, Tennessee. Contractors trusted that brand the way they trust a good framing crew. Then, Stanley Black & Decker acquired it, and over the course of a decade, they quietly ran it into the ground. Products got discontinued. The ones that stayed got redesigned with cheaper components. Quality complaints started stacking up in the reviews. And today, Porter Cable exists mostly as a name, a label. Stanley Black & Decker still uses it, but if you compare a Porter Cable tool from 2005 to one from 2022, you're not looking at the same product. You're looking at a brand that was kept alive just long enough to sell its existing customer base a cheaper version of what they thought they were getting. This is what I call stripping a brand for parts, and it happens more than most people realize. Here's how it works. A large corporation, usually a conglomerate or a private equity-backed holding company, buys an iconic tool brand. The brand has a great reputation, people trust it, contractors recommend it, dads hand it down to their kids. That trust is worth a lot of money. So the acquiring company keeps the name, keeps the logo, keeps the marketing language, and then slowly reduces the cost of manufacturing. They move production overseas. They use lighter materials. They shorten the cord, shrink the battery capacity, reduce the warranty coverage, eliminate the American-made components. And because the name still says what it always said, most consumers don't notice right away. They buy on-brand loyalty. They don't realize the brand has already been hollowed out. By the time people start catching on, the company has already made its money on the reputation. And then they either keep the zombie brand alive at a lower price point, or they let it fade out entirely while pushing customers toward another brand in their portfolio. Craftsman is probably the most well-known version of this story. Sears built that brand for decades. The lifetime warranty. Made in the USA. Your grandfather's socket set. The brand had genuine emotional weight for millions of people. Then, Sears sold Craftsman to Stanley Black & Decker in 2017 for about $900 million. And look, to be fair, some of the Craftsman tools that came out after that acquisition are actually decent. Stanley Black & Decker wasn't completely asleep at the wheel. But a lot of consumers came back expecting the same Craftsman they grew up with and found something different. The tools aren't all made in the same facilities. The quality is inconsistent depending on which product line you're looking at. And the brand name is now spread across everything from basic homeowner stuff to so-called professional grade, which means the name alone tells you almost nothing about what you're actually buying. Now, let's talk about something that really gets under my skin. which is the badge engineering problem. You know what badge engineering is? It's when the same physical tool gets made in the same factory, packed into the same housing, with the same motor and the same components, and then gets sold under three different brand names at three different price points. Ryobi, Ridgid, and Milwaukee are all owned by a company called Tektronic Industries, also known as TTI. Now, Milwaukee has maintained genuinely strong quality, and they operate somewhat independently in terms of product development. But Ryobi and Ridgid, which are both in that same corporate family, have been used in a way that serves the portfolio more than the consumer. Ridgid used to be a heavy industrial brand. Pipe wrenches, threading machines, job site tough. Real contractor grade stuff. Now, you walk into Home Depot and the Ridgid power tool line is essentially a step above Ryobi in price, and in some cases, a step below in actual performance. The brand name still carries contractor credibility. The product itself does not always back that up. Here's what no one tells you. When you're buying a tool from a big box store and you're trying to decide between the mid-range brand and the premium brand on the shelf next to it, you should be asking yourself not just what the tool is, but who actually owns the company that made it. Because in a lot of cases, you're comparing two tools that share a corporate parent. And the price difference is mostly about the label on the box. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here to tell you that every acquisition ruins a brand. DeWalt is owned by Stanley Black & Decker and has largely held its reputation in the professional space. Milwaukee has done well under TTI. Klein Tools is still independent. Estwing is still independent. Channellock is still family-owned. Starrett still makes precision measuring tools the way they always have. There are companies out there that genuinely understand their product and protect it. But the point is, brand ownership matters now in a way it didn't used to. You can't just walk in and grab the name your dad trusted without doing a small amount of homework first. Let me give you a real example that comes up constantly in renovation work. Hand planes. If you go on eBay or to an estate sale and you find an old Stanley Bailey hand plane from the 1940s or 1950s, you should strongly consider buying it. Those old Stanley planes were made to real tolerances: heavy cast iron, properly machined beds, good quality blade steel. New Stanley planes, especially the mid-range consumer stuff, are simply not the same product. The brand is the same. The quality is not. There are newer options that are excellent. Veritas and Lie-Nielsen both make great planes, but they're not cheap. The point is, a 70-year-old tool with the right name might genuinely outperform a brand new one sitting on a store shelf today. That's how far the drop in quality can go between the original product and what's being sold under that same name right now. This is where people mess up when they're renovating or building something. They walk into the store, they grab the familiar name, and they assume the product is what it always was. And then they're fighting a tool that doesn't want to cooperate instead of getting the job done. A bad circular saw that wanders off your cut line is not a skill problem. A bad jigsaw that vibrates so badly you can't even see the line you're trying to follow is not a skill problem. These are cheap tool problems, and cheap tool problems cost you time, material, and eventually money. Here's a pro tip. Before you buy any power tool, look up the model number and search for reviews from 2019 or earlier if the brand has been around that long. Then, compare those reviews to the recent ones. If the older reviews are glowing and the recent ones are full of people saying the quality has changed, something changed. Companies don't announce when they cut costs on a product, but reviewers notice. Contractors notice. And if you look at the timeline of the reviews, you can often see exactly when the quality shift happened. It shows up clearly if you look for it. Now, let's talk about the part most homeowners forget, which is hand tools. People spend a lot of time debating cordless drill brands and battery platforms. And I get it, that matters. But the hand tools you use every day, your hammer, your tape measure, your levels, your chisels, your screwdrivers, those can be even more vulnerable to brand dilution because they're cheaper to fake. The margins on a $10 screwdriver are significant if you're cutting corners on the steel. And the consumer is never going to know until the tip rounds off on a stubborn screw and strips the head on a fastener you really needed to get out cleanly. Irwin Tools is a good example of this. Irwin was a respected brand for hand tools and cutting tools. They got absorbed into the Stanley Black & Decker family. Some of their product lines have held up, others have not. The Vice grip locking plier, which is an Irwin product and one of the most trusted and copied hand tools ever made, has had quality complaints that simply did not exist when the product was made in DeWitt, Nebraska. They moved production overseas. The tool still works, but the consistency, the fit, the long-term durability, it's not what it was. And yes, I know some of you are going to disagree with me on that. Some people have gotten great vice grips recently, but I've also seen enough bad ones in the field to know this is not just nostalgia talking. The bigger issue here is that when you're doing renovation work, you are depending on your tools. A tape measure that slips at the hook throws off every measurement you take. A level that isn't actually level will haunt every tile line, every cabinet run, and every door casing you install. These aren't just quality of life issues. These are accuracy issues. And accuracy in renovation is money. If your tools are lying to you, your whole job is wrong from the start, and you won't know it until it's too late to fix it cheaply. Can we please stop ignoring the measuring tape situation for a second? This one drives me nuts. People will spend hours researching which impact driver to buy, and then grab a no-name tape measure off the clearance rack. The tape measure is the tool that touches every single thing you build. The hook at the end of the blade, that little metal tab, has to be loose by exactly the thickness of itself, so that it self-corrects whether you're measuring from the inside or the outside of a surface. If that tolerance is off by even a fraction, every single measurement you take is wrong. Every cut, every layout mark. Go buy a good tape measure. A Lufkin, a Stanley Fatmax that's been checked, a Milwaukee. Spend $15. It is not the place to save money. So what do you actually do with all of this? First, know the brands that have stayed independent or have genuinely proven themselves under new ownership. Klein for electrical tools, Estwing for hammers and hatchets, Channellock for pliers, Starrett for precision layout and measuring, Bosch for rotary hammers and some corded power tools, Milwaukee for cordless professional grade platforms, Makita for consistent mid to high range power tools across a broad range of applications. These are not absolute rules, and there are exceptions in every lineup, but these are places where the quality has generally stayed tied to the name in a meaningful way. Second, stop buying tools based purely on what's on sale at the big box store that week. I know that sounds obvious, but when you're in the middle of a project and you need something, the pull toward convenience and a low price is real, and it's strong. Give yourself a 10-minute window to look up the brand ownership and read recent reviews before you commit. That 10 minutes can save you from buying a tool you'll be replacing in 18 months and complaining about in the meantime. Third, consider vintage hand tools for specific applications. A quality used handsaw, a set of older chisels, a well-made hand plane, a Stanley layout square from the right era. These tools don't need batteries. They don't have circuit boards that fail. They don't have proprietary battery platforms you'll need to replace when the company discontinues the line in 4 years. If they were made right the first time, they will outlast anything sitting on a big box shelf today. Estate sales, flea markets, and online resale markets are full of these tools at reasonable prices. You just need to learn what you're looking for and what to inspect before you buy. And fourth, if you're a homeowner hiring contractors, pay attention to their tools. I know that might sound strange, but a contractor who invests in quality tools is a contractor who takes the work seriously. It's not a guarantee of good work, But someone who shows up with tools that are clearly worn out, poorly maintained, or visibly cheap is showing you something about how they think about their trade. It's worth noticing. Tell me in the comments which brand surprised you. Maybe you bought something thinking it was the same product your dad used and found out it wasn't. Maybe you found a solid tool recently that actually held up the way it was supposed to. I want to hear it because real-world experience from people actually using these things is worth more than any spec sheet. The bottom line here is simple. A brand name used to mean something specific. It meant a company stood behind a product that was built a certain way, to a certain standard, with materials that were chosen for durability. Today, a brand name often just means a company still owns the trademark and has decided to keep using it. Those are two very different things. When you buy tools, buy the actual tool, not just the logo. Do 5 minutes of research. Look at who owns the brand now. Look at where it's made. Look at whether the quality reviews have shifted in the last few years. And when in doubt, buy from brands that have stayed independent and stayed accountable to the people who actually use the product in the field every day. A good tool is an investment. A bad tool is a tax on your time, your patience, and your finished work. Know the difference before you hand over your money. If this one was useful to you, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who is about to drop money on tools they're going to regret. I'll catch you in the next one.